whispering in the trees. It's two cities and they're only passing.
Hey everybody, it's me, T-Rex, producer of the Region Underground, head of this WJOB video department. Taking a little time out today talking to you about what happened on Preacher's show last Friday. As you guys know, Preacher was a little sick, couldn't make it, so I held down the fort for him, and it was a pretty cool experience. Got to conduct a very cool interview. The interview was with Rich Herschlag. He's one of the co-authors of a book called Sinatra, Gotti and Me. It basically details a lot of the interesting details of Frank Sinatra's life. Let me pull it up for you here real quick. Hopefully you can see that. That's Rich there. He called in around 4:30 on Friday, and I got the chance to talk with him. The Preacher sent me a few questions specifically that he wanted me to answer, and learned a lot more about Sinatra. If you guys would like a copy of this book, go check our friends out at Miles Books. They're located at 2819 Jewett Avenue in Highland, Indiana. Preacher is going to eventually let me borrow it to read, but in the meantime, it's a very cool book. He's almost, I think, halfway done with it or close to it. Check out this part of the interview I had with Rich from this past Friday's show. On the line, we've got Rich Herschlag, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, of Sinatra, Gotti and Me. Rich, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, T-Rex, and you did get the pronunciation right. Listen, a couple people in my own family have gotten it wrong, so I give you a lot of credit.
Thank you very much. I feel much better. One particular topic that Preacher wanted to talk to you about was he wanted to talk to you about the first day that the Carpenters Union came to do some renovations. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you know a little bit about the West Side there, it had a nickname, Hell's Kitchen. And now there's still a Hell's Kitchen, but it's all renovated. It's gentrified. It's a high-rent district. In the late 70s, it was still a down and dirty area. I mean, you know, it wasn't what I would call unsafe, but there was a lot of, let's call it mob activity behind the scenes. And you had the Italian mob, and you had the Westies, which is the Westies, the Irish mob. And, you know, Tony's a guy from Newark, New Jersey, came in there late 1976 and figured, oh, I got a few of my friends, we'll fix up the place, you know, do some carpentry, do some plumbing. But lo and behold, union leader from the Westies, tough Irish guy, walked in and said, you can't do this. I'm giving you, you know, you got to shut down. I'll talk to you tomorrow, bring in 5 of my guys. And he didn't realize who he was dealing with. So Tony just said, I'd appreciate it. You know how you walked in? I'd appreciate it if you walked the F back out. And that was polite for Tony, who was, you know, who counted John Gotti among his best friends. Never used that fact, tried not to use it. And this guy just basically took a swing at him. And then it was just bedlam. Tony and his 3 carpenters, you know, took him out. As it was described in the book, it was like Bat Day at Yankee Stadium, except using 2x4s. And they, you know, the guys kind of mopped the floor with them, and they walked out. And Tony gave a call afterwards to John Gotti and said, John, this is what... John Gotti was sort of a man behind the scenes at Jilly's. He was supplying bartenders and things like that. And Tony said, John, just to let you know, this is what happened. I hope I didn't step on any of your toes. And, you know, he said, no, you did exactly what you should do with those guys. So there was not really an exact order of who did what and which mob was superior to what mob, but it's sort of, a lot of these things were settled the old-fashioned way. How connected was Frank Sinatra to the mob? There's been a lot of rumors of that. Yeah, I'm a very privileged person. I got to hear a lot of inside stuff, and, you know, a lot of things in the world are black and white, they're binary, they're 0 or 1. This was in between in the sense that Frank Sinatra was not a made guy, a wise guy, anything like that. He was not in the mob, but did he have a few wise guy friends who were as close, you know, as close can be? Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Does that make you a mobster? No, but does it make you live in some sort of a gray area? Absolutely. And the 2 people you would have to name at the top of the list, of course, there's Sam Giancana, who was his friend from the Chicago mob, who was also very closely connected to the Kennedys. Ooh. And you also have, in the early 50s, Sinatra barely could get a gig. A lot of things had gone wrong in his career. He was sort of second rung compared to Eddie Fisher. Everybody's career hits the slide, hits the skids now and then. But he was in the process of divorcing his wife, and divorce was a big deal in those days. He hadn't yet gotten his big break in the movie From Here to Eternity. He was down on his luck, and Skinny D'Amato, who owned the 500 Club in Atlantic City, was the only guy who would give him a regular gig. So Frank, above all, was a really loyal person. So from that day on, you know, he remembered Skinny D'Amato, and everybody connected to him. Sam Giancana was giving him jobs, and
all
that's
right.
the way the world
Now,
works.
how close do you think Frankie and Dino actually were?
You mean Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin?
You got it.
I would say they weren't as close as Frank Sinatra and Jilly Rizzo. Dean Martin had Frank Sinatra's respect and vice versa because, you know, Italian-Americans, great singers, and beyond that, great personality. And they got along really well, too. I mean, they were the two initial pillars of the Rat Pack. But they weren't cut from the same cloth because Dean Martin was more of a family man. He would eventually, you know, he wasn't as big a drinker as he made himself out to be on the show. You know, that was very funny. It was a gimmick.
Right.
But Frank drank more than Dean. Dean might go home at midnight, you know, to his wife and kids. And you know, Dean also was not interested in all the power politics of Hollywood like Frank was. He didn't, you know, carry a big stick. So, you know, they were close, but from what Pat Cooper told me, no one got really, really close to Dean Martin because part of Dean just didn't like the Hollywood scene, and he kept himself somewhat private.
No kidding.
Yeah. You know, Jerry Lewis was more into that than Dean Martin. You know, a lot of people, well, some people who have that kind of talent, and Dean Martin had a lot of talent. They don't buy into that whole lifestyle completely, you know. So that's definitely the category that Dean Martin was in.
Gotcha. What now? Would you say there was a rivalry at all between the two of them at any time?
I wouldn't say an outright rivalry. They worked in a couple movies together. They did get along. I wouldn't call it a rivalry, but you know there were always insults going back and forth. But within the Rat Pack, the biggest problems that occurred, I would say number one was between Peter Lawford and Frank Sinatra.